Good afternoon to you. Mark Sudd with HurricaneTrack.com here with your hurricane outlook and discussion for Tuesday, the 26th of June, 2018. Atlantic Basin still nice and quiet for the most part. We will be watching a non-tropical area of low pressure that's going to be developing off the coast of North Carolina and then moving fairly quickly along with the frontal system out to sea. It's a rather complex setup, but we do see that from time to time. We refer to that as frontal development. And that is somewhat typical in a year where we have a developing El Nino. Although we are not really in an El Nino state completely just yet, it's probably more of just a coincidence than anything else. Systems like this developed, we saw that in 2015 with Tropical Storm Claudette that formed along an old frontal boundary off the east coast and then moved fairly quickly out to sea. A bulk of the action is going to remain in the eastern Pacific. Yet, I still don't see any signs of significant hurricane activity from what we have out there. It's just kind of a bunch of weaker systems instead of any singular powerhouse events lining up. So let's get rid of me for the time being. I'll come back in a little bit. We're going to talk about the mailbag for today, since I didn't do it yesterday, but we'll get to that. So let's look at this first off the coast of my neck of the woods. A complex, non-tropical area of low pressure has formed near the coast of North Carolina. I don't remember feeling it, but I guess it went by. I guess the storms last night was part of that, but nevertheless, they say it has formed right off our coast, and environmental conditions could support that this system gradually would acquire some tropical characteristics over the next few days. This is what the satellite presentation looks like. And you can see that well-defined frontal boundary here. And I saw that there was some snow up here in Newfoundland today. Pass. It's summertime. We don't need any snow, but you guys can have it up there. I guess it beats the heat, doesn't it? Here's another large mesoscale convective complex or system, whatever you want to call it. Huge area of thunderstorms coming through parts of Indiana and Illinois after moving through Missouri. But this is the system that we're watching here. It's probably going to move off in this direction over time, and it might try to develop a little bit more. And we'll talk about that closer in just a moment, a closer up look at it, I should say. So now going to the eastern Pacific, things are very busy. We do have the obituary written here for Daniel. It won't even let me mouse over it. I guess it's dead, so look at that. That's interesting, the way the coding has been for this one. It doesn't let you do it here. You have to do it there. Whatever. The mouse over, that's what I'm talking about. Daniel's gone. It's post-tropical, so no more issues from it, as if there were any. All of these are kind of messed up. That's weird. And it's not me or my browser. It's just something in the coding of the web page. So let's just look at the 5-day, and we'll see it graphically represented. Very busy over the next 5 days here, as you see systems coming one after the other. And this is interesting, developing here over Central America. And it's the same longitude, get it right, Mark. This is the same longitude, for what it's worth, as Apalachicola, Florida, roughly. And, just saying, if the geography wasn't like this, and Central America came down like that, and then connected to South America, this would be in the Southwest Caribbean Sea. So it's kind of a little bit of cheating that it's in the Eastern Pacific that this will get going. And even once it does get going, it's over here somewhere or whatever, it's still in the same realm as the Western Gulf. My point is, that's not too far off from saying that this would develop in the Atlantic Basin if it wasn't for this, what we call in geographic terms, this isthmus down here of Panama and Costa Rica connecting these two large land masses. Yes, they do separate a couple of big ocean basins, but, that's getting kind of close there for what it's worth. And then this will develop a little bit more to the west with time, truly in the Southeast Pacific Basin. I'm probably just nitpicking. Neither of these pose any threat to land, so that's obviously great news there. Alrighty, so off my neck of the woods, this is can you spot it? I can't, but somewhere in here is a low pressure area, and it'll probably start to feed back pretty quickly water temperatures in this region through here, where you have the Gulf Stream especially, are very warm and a little bit warmer than average, in some cases significantly warmer than average. And so you folks along the Outer Banks here could see some gusty winds and rough local sea conditions as this starts to take shape. And once it moves away and it gets more organized, some of that northwest side activity could impact you. So just be mindful of that. Rip current's always an issue out there. We have unfortunately seen several people lose their lives along the Outer Banks in the spring and early summer season due to strong action from the ocean. And in Dare County, it's been a real problem. And I think 2 people in the same day just a few weeks ago. So be mindful of this if you're in the eastern part of the Carolinas, mainly the Outer Banks there, the Outer Banks proper, Dare County and Hyde County down to Ocracoke, etc. So just, be careful, please. We want you around to enjoy the rest of the summer and beyond. So what will this do? This will probably develop and head out to sea, maybe bring some moisture to southeast New England, kind of like a departing nor'easter would that just misses the benchmark, so to speak, and that's going to head out instead of stay around and bring a big blizzard. This is kind of like that, except it's the summertime version. That's the best way I can put it. And so we'll watch and see how this evolves over the next few days. Here's an animation from Levi's site, Levi Cowan at Tropical Tidbits, right there, see it? And I created a little GIF animation from his awesome satellite setup that he's got. And even on this, I can't really find much evidence of rotation around here, but I'm sure it's there, and it'll take a little bit of time, and this will get going. And when we look at this tomorrow, it'll probably be quite prevalent. But you can definitely see the frontal structure out here, and as this gets going, it'll be attached to that front like a grape on a grapevine or whatever, and it's not until it detaches that it becomes fully tropical in nature. So we'll wait and see. I guess you can see just a little bit of these clouds moving this way here. I don't know, I'm just trying to pick it out. It would have been nice to be on the Outer Banks today to see this take shape, but that's a heck of a trek out there in the height of summer season. Probably not a condo or a hotel room available that's less than $500 a night. So we'll wait till later, if there is a later, if you know what I mean. Looking at the Eastern Pacific, I like this from the Weather Nerd site, just to kind of point out there is the remnant circulation of Daniel, and you can clearly see all of the effects of this cooler water through here, and it moved into that environment, and that was the end of Daniel. Then we have just this kind of mishmash of stuff down here trying to get going, and evidently the computer models suggesting that something will in fact do so over the next few days, and you can see that outlined very well in the vorticity chart. Nothing standing out just yet, so you have this sort of elongated area of energy or vorticity, but nothing really popping up and singularing, is that a word? Nothing being singled out just yet. That's what I was trying to say. Let's use black for just a minute. Check this out. For what it's worth, a little bit of energy coming off the coast of Africa, and we'll track that over the next few days and see where that ends up as it moves across the rather hostile tropical Atlantic. Cooler sea surface temperatures than average, plenty of Saharan dust, a lot of talk about that as of late, and it's actually penetrating all the way into the Caribbean this time, and very prominently so. In fact, I believe I can just show you that instead of talking about it. Let's bring it up. Let's do it from here. There we go. Bingo. Ask and ye shall receive. So here it is. There's the tropical wave energy coming off Africa that's kind of knocked it down somewhat. But boy, out here, very prevalent Saharan dust, Saharan air layer signature all the way into the Caribbean Sea, putting a lid on things. But this one tropical wave that's coming off, we'll see where that ends up. Pretty vigorous for June, you got to admit. And we will see as we get towards July and August, especially August, obviously, that these robust tropical waves end up where the water temperatures are warmer than they are here. But that's a story for another day. I keep alluding to it. it'll be here before you know it, and then we will see. We'll see if it matters or if it matters not. Speaking of mattering, the sea surface temperatures here off the coast will matter. Thought I'd show you this again real quick. Our low pressure area going to develop somewhere in this vicinity, and absolutely it's definitely got 28 Celsius water to work with, 28 C, so that's about 82 Fahrenheit. And depending on what track it takes, if it follows the Gulf Stream, it could do pretty well for itself, and it might wind up being a tropical depression or a tropical storm. You never know. I usually am not surprised anymore when things overachieve. You just never know. And so don't be surprised if this develops into a fairly small, compact, sort of a go-getter tropical storm barrel before all is said and done. If it doesn't, that's fine too, but I just, you never know, especially when you have the Gulf Stream and these energetic little tiny systems that try to take advantage of those conditions. Looking in the Eastern Pacific, I wanted to just point out again the lack of any major disturbance developing into a significant hurricane, and you can see that in the 850 millibar vorticity field here. This is the one system that I showed you in the Outlook map. Let me just show you that again real quick. It's that system right there that I'm highlighting in red, and this is the other system farther to the east. So let's get rid of that, and we'll start over. So neither of them really does much. All right, so let's stop it and start it again. Go back to the beginning. We'll speed it up too. That's the first system. There's the second one. And, they might become hurricanes, but they're not showing up as like major league intense systems. So maybe no more Category 3 or 4. You never say never, of course, but it just seems that there's something missing. We're going to have quantity over quality for the next few days, unless this is just off, unless the GFS is just, having problems. But it seems to do pretty well in the Eastern Pacific. It handled Aletta and Bud fairly well, and Carlotta, and then now Daniel, so we'll see. Bottom line, no big deal coming out of the Pacific. All right, let's bring me back in just for a moment. Like I mentioned at the top, I want to go over a couple of emails that I received. I tried to do it on Monday, but I forgot yesterday, and we had a lot to talk about anyway, and things are kind of quiet, so why not? So this email, I'm going to read it right off the iPhone. The email comes to my iPhone from Michael Thibodeau. I think I said that name right. Michael, I appreciate the email. He and I have been exchanging quite a bit back and forth, and I like that interaction with social media and Facebook messaging and Twitter. It's nice to sometimes just to get an email. So here you go. Back in the old days, my inbox would just be filled, and now you get comments, messages, and so forth. It all adds up. It's great, but it's nice to get an old-fashioned email. So basically, Michael has two questions. We're going to hear from Michael today, and then I'm going to go over an email that I got from David Zitlow, and we'll address that in just a moment. So Michael wants to know, what kind of coordination do I have with local law enforcement to lessen the chance of being questioned when we are out and about, etc.? All right, so he's got two questions. I'll do the first one. Generally speaking, we know a lot of the people that we're going to be interacting with ahead of time. And so there really isn't much coordination with law enforcement until we get to the area, and it just depends on the severity of the situation. Now, when we had the Tahoe, we no longer have that. It looks like, you remember the Tahoe, it had that look. And so there's no question as to why we're there. And I would say 99.5% of the time, law enforcement was always very curious in a very positive way. And we never had any issues. Every once in a while, we'd run into someone who just didn't, care much for us or whatever. And they would say, you can't come here, you can't go there, or whatever. But we never had any issues. Certainly have never been arrested or asked to leave an area. And in most cases, literally 99.5% of the time, we're talking over 20 years of doing this, they embrace what we're doing. We oftentimes have more information than they have regarding the hurricane, and we're glad to share, especially back in the old days, as we call it, when we had mobile internet and they didn't. Now everything is right here on your phone, but even in those cases, oftentimes we'll come in with information that is fresher and from reliable sources, and they're still dealing with trying to put out fires, so to speak, from rumors getting generated that the hurricane has suddenly turned or it's going to be a Category 6 and all that nonsense. And so most of the time, just the very presence of us being there, we all kind of get along real well together. It's amazing, and we have had some incredible interactions with law enforcement over the years. Go back and look at the '04 and the '05 DVDs, or the programs of tracking the hurricanes on YouTube, '04, '05, and you'll see a lot of that interaction there. And it just depends. Again, if it's an area where we know somebody, we'll get in touch ahead of time with emergency management or somebody usually with the fire department. But many, many times it's just an interesting camaraderie that comes together, that we're here to help, we're on your team, and we can provide you with some very good information. And I want to make it very clear, too, that we never, ever charge law enforcement or first responders or anybody to access our data or whatever. Anytime we can ever, even with the app, if I have an opportunity to provide them with a code to get it for free, we want to make sure that the local officials have access to what we're doing. And if it's behind a paywall, we make it available through a secret back door. All right? So the law enforcement thing, let me just add this: the respect that I have for what they do on a daily basis. Oftentimes people say that our jobs are dangerous, please be careful, etc. While I appreciate that, believe you me, law enforcement and first responders have a much more dangerous job every single hour of every day that they're on the clock. I think the most dangerous part of what we do is just driving there and back. And the second question that Michael had was in regards to construction management industry, which is what he is in, and that they emphasize learning from the past, lessons learned, etc., and what they do with that every day. So what are some of our lessons learned that you have experienced and adopted? Well, in terms of our operations, it would definitely be the idea of coming into the area that we're going to be in well prepared. And I know that sounds obvious, but you learn. And the biggest thing is gasoline and having enough of that and making sure that you have a reliable vehicle. And all of those years that the Tahoe was in operation, 430,000 miles, it never, ever failed while we were in a mission situation, ever. And so keeping the vehicles maintained, we always built upon that success, and making sure we have enough fuel. And that's really hard to do. You cannot feasibly drive around with 40 to 60 extra gallons of gasoline safely. If you put it outside your vehicle, somebody's going to try to steal it inevitably. And if you put it inside the vehicle, obviously that comes with a whole host of potential problems. So building upon things that we've learned from the past in terms of logistics. And then, of course, and Michael brings up a good question here, and you think about the evolution of our equipment, judging from everything we've done in the past with old, larger, bulky laptop-based systems, we moved forward and we now use much smaller Raspberry Pi computers for the weather stations, and these tiny little boxes. I happen to have one right here, for our camera systems. That's brand new sealant on there that I'm letting dry in my office, and the 75-degree coolness of the office here. So that right there, that little tiny box, compared to what we've done in the past, is definitely applying some lessons learned from before, but that was because technology allowed us to do so. You just move forward and try to think, okay, what can we do better from last time? And so far, so good. We have done very well over 20 years with never, knock on wood somewhere in here, I don't have any wood, maybe the wall, sheetrock, knock on sheetrock, we've never had a major catastrophe happen while we were in a mission situation. So I guess luck has been on our side, but luck favors the prepared, and we've definitely learned from what we have done in the past. So the third question, or the third email, or it's the third question, second email from David Zitlow. He was asking me, similar to the law enforcement thing about coordination, etc., and I thought this was good. He wanted to know about the hotel situation. How do we book a hotel? And how does all that work out? Do we have any special requirements? And part of the best way to answer that is brand loyalty. I am very loyal to certain brands, and over the years you just start depending on that, and especially if they are successful in delivering what they promise. And that goes through, the places that we eat. We really like, you've seen it over the years, Outback, wherever we go, Chick-fil-A. Try to make things simple, and not worry so much about planning what are we going to do than relying on what is usually going to serve your needs. And that goes from the restaurants that we eat at, yes, to the hotel rooms that we stay in. And so we use Hilton Honors or whatever, the Hilton properties. And really it's just a matter of, and I mean by now I've stayed in probably most of the Hilton properties along pretty much anywhere there could be a hurricane, believe it or not. I mean, I know there's hundreds and hundreds of locations, but between the Hampton Inns, the Hilton Garden Inns, the Homewood Suites, and all their brands, we just try to pick a location that's near a city with infrastructure, and that's where they're usually going to be, but not right in the surge zone. So really, David, to answer your question specifically about logistics, because the easy part is we're going to choose a Hilton property. The hard part is making sure we know that it's not in a surge zone, or not in an area like for Houston during the flood last year that won't flood. And so that's a great example. The Hampton Inn that I stayed in during those few days where Houston, parts of it went underwater, I was on the west side and along West Park Row, and they were great, no problems. They had hardly any flooding at all. But just behind me was the Addicks Reservoir, which was filling up, and so you just never know. But we try to put a little thought into it. But that brand loyalty really does go a long way. I'm very serious about that, knowing that we're going to have certain things to rely on going forward. And so if we stay at a Hampton Inn or a Hilton Garden Inn or what have you, they always have good Wi-Fi. We know what to expect. Been there many times, so you get benefits, etc. And it helps to make the staying part and sleeping part easier because we don't have to worry about it. So those are some great questions. I appreciate it, both from Michael and David. If you have a question you want to ask, sort of the Ask Me Anything like they do on Reddit, send it to Hurmark, HURRMARK, @gmail.com. But don't send, I said this before, am I going to have a hurricane in August, or what do you think the rest of the season is going to be like? Because those are things we can just talk about right here as part of the discussion. But, more of a, hey, I've always wondered, whatever. Ask me something like that, and I'll try to answer it as best I can. All right, so thanks, David. Thanks, Michael, for that. And Michael has more, which we'll go over in the future. I'll save those for another day. And speaking of another day, I'm done for today. You guys have a great rest of your Tuesday. I appreciate you tuning in as always. I am Mark Sutton of HurricaneTrack.com, and we will reconvene here tomorrow for another look at the tropics.